Yes, indeed, it is Saturday, January 18th, 2025. Today in the classroom, we're going to be discussing sleep health. And then, once we're done, we will resume our first-time playthrough of Fallout New Vegas, my first time ever playing any Fallout game. But we have to start with our breathing exercise. We do this before every stream. Whether we have a lesson or it's just a game, I always begin us with 1 minute of breathing. That's all I ask. Just follow along for 60 seconds. It's just that important. And don't worry about it, Ralsei. You're right on time. For those of you who have been here before, you know what to do. If you're new, what I want you to do is sit up nice and straight in your chair, but make sure you're still comfortable. Unclench yourself, relax your jaw, roll your shoulders back a bit, and put your feet flat on the floor if you're tall enough. And then I want you to take one hand, or paw, or claw, or talon, or hoof, whatever it is that you have on the end of your limbs, and put it right over your chest. And then I want you to take the other hand, or paw, or claw, or talon, or hoof, whatever it is that you have on the end of another limb, and put it over your abdomen. Because we want to feel our abdomen rise and fall, not just our chest. We want to pull the air down deep, where our lungs have more surface area, and give ourselves more time to take in the oxygen. We're going to do a 4-7-8 breathing exercise, because we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. We're going to hold it gently for 7, and then we're going to breathe out slowly through our mouth for 8 seconds. The little pink ball that you see going around on the GIF, because it's GIF, not GIF, it's pronounced with a G, not a G. But you can follow along on the little pink ball. We'll wait for it to go around one more time, but when it hits the top is when we start breathing in. When it's in the white section is where we hold it, and the light green section is where we breathe out. Oh, and thank you so much, Puppy Sensei. Don't worry about it. So get yourself ready, because we're going to take 3 deep breaths. Get nice and comfy in your chair. Ready, and breathe in. And hold it. And exhale. Slowly. We want to exhale slowly. Get it all the way out. Around again. Breathe in. And hold it. And exhale. Slowly all the way out. One more time. Breathe in. And hold. And exhale slowly. You want to feel your lungs completely empty. Rarely do we completely empty our lungs properly. And that's it. There you go. That's all it takes. Didn't take very long, did it? We breathe 3, sometimes 4 times faster than this just in our daily lives nowadays. And all of that rapid, shallow breathing leaves us physically more susceptible to stress and anxiety. We are more likely to become stressed and anxious simply because we breathe too quickly and too shallow. So this is an exercise that you can do anytime. It's great right away in the morning to get yourself centered, right before bed, as we'll talk about, or right before a test or interview or anything that might be stressing you out. If you take just 60 seconds to take a few deep breaths throughout the day, I can tell you it will improve your health and well-being. So thank you so much for following along with that. And indeed, it is our second year of teaching. It's 2025 and we are on Unit 1, Lesson 2. We talked about blood donation last week because it was, or still is, National Blood Donation Month. So we're going to be talking about sleep health today, and hopefully getting to the point where we can honk, shoo, me. Yes, yes. But yes, the first question we have to ask is, what is sleep? What's sleep anyway? The big eepy, as Ralsei puts it. Since sleep is the topic of our lesson, what is it? What the heck is sleep anyway? Well, Wikipedia and the dictionary say that sleep is a state of reduced mental and physical activity in which consciousness is altered and certain sensory activity is inhibited. Well, what does that actually mean? Rouse says it's the thing you're not allowed to do in class. You know what? If you are so tired that you need to sleep, I'm all right with people sleeping in my class as long as I'm not the one who put them there. But sleep affects everything in your body. Important to note that sleep is complex and dynamic. And what I mean by that is that it's still being figured out. There's a lot of different stuff happening. It's not just one state of being. You are changing all throughout the night. It's not just like in hibernation mode, like a computer. Nomi has been irresponsible with their sleep for the last few months. Well, hopefully we can help you get that figured out, right? It's okay. It's okay if it's not going perfect right now. There is a question that people have been asking, though, is, why do we sleep at all? Is it because in our past, there were periods where being active simply didn't have any benefit? The prevailing theories about why sleep even developed among living organisms like humans are that perhaps, after we eat or something, there's no point to moving around more. So we're conserving energy. We're conserving energy so that we can be more active when we need to be active. Perhaps we choose to rest at night because we can avoid danger. Maybe it's about min-maxing, like you would do in an RPG. We're concentrating all of our activity into the periods where it's most beneficial. You are taller in your sleep than in the morning. Yeah, you're decompressing and all that. But I have to post this quote from Dr. William Dement. And yes, that's actually his name, Dr. William Dement. Interestingly enough, because he is the father of modern sleep science. He helped describe and define the sleep cycles, the sleep stages, really helped us to understand REM sleep. And Dr. William Dement, probably, I think he passed just a few years ago, probably the person who knew the most about sleep out of anyone at the time. He said that, as far as I know, the only reason we need to sleep that is really, really solid is because we get sleepy. Yeah. That's what he said. Our foremost expert in sleep simply did not know why sleep exists or why we sleep. That's how poorly we understand sleep. Actually, it's super interesting that we're really not sure why and how it developed it. I have a question, though. Question for you, since this is a school, this is a class. What about you, students? Do you think that we used to sleep more? Do you think that we sleep less today in the modern world than we used to in, say, ancient times? Because there's been a lot of debate about that. A lot of people think that in other ancient times, in different cultures, that we sleep more than we do right now. Some people thought that we used, as Noe just pointed out, biphasic sleep. We would sleep 2 different periods during the day. Some people think that we used to sleep just from sundown to sunup, whenever that was. So we might sleep more during some periods of the year than others. What do you think? Well, very interestingly, in what we're discovering, is that maybe not. It might not actually be the case that we used to sleep more. In some parts of the world we did. It seems to also be based on location. In hotter parts of the world, people might have actually slept less than we sleep today. They might have slept primarily when the day got cooler. When the sun set and they did go to sleep in a more sundown to sunup period. But it seems like all of the things that I just mentioned, sometimes sleeping more, sometimes sleeping less, sometimes twice a day, or maybe multiple times through the day. All of those things were true, but it depends on where and when. Dr. Bridget Steger, what she suggested is that there is no such thing as natural sleep. That sleep has always been cultural, social, and ideological. That our expectations about sleep our available food sources when they were awake and asleep, our beliefs about things, especially astronomical, they've all played a part in whether or not that particular group of people slept more or less, slept multiple times a day or just once throughout the night. So we really don't know, and there may not even be a totally natural type of sleep that is universal for all humans. Rousey, you say, is it possible to condition people out of sleeping because of that? We do have a need for sleep generally. We do need a period of rest. We've come to develop that. It has actually been very beneficial, that period of inactivity. It's given rise to a great deal more creativity. Our intelligence as a species has grown a great deal because we sleep at night. We're able to concentrate our cognitive capacity when we're awake. We do need some kind of period of inactivity, but when that is, does have a variability depending on where we live, the climate where we live, the people around us. There's some research that suggests people are actually built to sleep at different times, that a community would have people who would sleep later and some people who would sleep earlier, so that some people would always be awake in the community as a protective effect. But think about your experiences and tell me about what you think. What do you believe? One of the things I find very interesting is that we actually sleep less than a lot of other primates. We actually sleep a lot less than a lot of other monkeys because we get more concentrated sleep. Our sleep is much more effective. Primarily because we don't have to worry as much about, say, predators. We have more safety and security in our sleep, or at least we did back in the day when we were developing sleep. CG, you like to sleep on your back. I've actually just begun sleeping on my back because I finally got a good firm mattress. I didn't even realize that I preferred it. Raven, you live in a place where it's hot and dry during the summer, so you're more energized during the summer and more tired in the winter. Exactly, yeah. The climate does play a big role on whether we feel sleepy at all or how much sleep we might need. So we do know that we need to sleep. And when we sleep can be variable. And if we get it in one big chunk or if we break it up, can be different. But what does the science say right now? What does the research say is what we need at a minimum? Well, obviously it's much more when we're younger. When we're children, when we're babies, babies will sleep much like my ferrets do, 14 to 17 hours a day. But that does gradually decline into adulthood, into about that 7 to 9 period that we're constantly talking about. But what are the consequences if we don't get enough sleep? Whether we get it in one big chunk or if we get it in little broken up bits, what are the consequences if we don't get enough sleep? Well, in the short term, fatigue, obviously. I think we can all relate to that one. Poor concentration, memory issues, obviously. Poor judgment is also something we don't normally talk about but need to. Our judgment is impaired when we are sleep deprived, which is why you should not make decisions. You should not make lasting decisions about your life when you're tired. You know, there's an old saying, don't make any decisions after midnight. It's probably true. You don't make very good choices when you're tired. And many of us are chronically tired. Maybe that has a little bit of something to do with the poor judgment a lot of people display in modern society. Perhaps our chronic sleep deprivation plays a role. Buying low-yield stocks, investing in meme coins, perhaps, Rao says. Irritability. I'm pretty irritable when I don't get enough sleep. Anxiety, of course. Over the long term, this can actually lead to greater risk of depression, can actually lead to greater risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all kinds of heart and blood vessel issues can arise from chronic sleep deprivation. It impacts our immune system, and in fact, all-cause mortality, or your risk of dying earlier, is greater if we are chronically sleep deprived. Cranky, yeah, getting cranky. There's some pretty severe consequences. So I gotta ask, I mean, if fatigue, difficulty concentrating, memory issues, trouble regulating our mood swings, irritability, frequent headaches, all leading to more severe long-term issues like high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes, early onset dementia, psychiatric disorders, anxiety, depression. If all of these things were linked to one single issue, if one habit did all these things, wouldn't it be a public health emergency? So why don't we consider our chronic sleep deprivation to be a public health emergency? It seems to have consequences as severe as things like drinking or other drug use. These are pretty severe consequences. The war on sleep, Ralsei says. Perhaps this set of consequences, these outcomes, maybe they are good for some people. Poor decision making, poor concentration, poor judgment. Yes, anomalies. It is much more subtle than some of the other issues. Pretty severe consequences. So how many of us don't get enough sleep? How big is this issue? How widespread is this public health emergency? Because that's what I'm going to call it. Our sleep, at least where I live in the US, in the West. Oh, Raven, thank you for submitting your homework. I'm going to call this a public health emergency. So how many of us don't get enough sleep? What do you think, class? Think about the number. Definitely you, so there's at least a sample size of Rao. It is currently about 1 in 3 people who are sleep deprived. So if you look at the person to your left and the person to your right, and these are just the numbers that we know of. Some of you are actually shocked that it's this low, yeah. I actually kind of think some of these people are maybe lying. You know, self-reported numbers are not always the most accurate. But this is what we think. But about 1 in 3 people do suffer from some kind of sleep deprivation. But that does still mean about 50 million people in just my country, in the US, have some kind of sleep disorder. And this is not just people who have trouble sleeping or who are sleep deprived. These are people who have sleep disorders. 50 million people. Half of people say that they feel sleepy throughout the day. You've only got dogs by you, CG. Well, they typically don't have any issue getting enough sleep, do they? The trend for humans, though, is getting worse. Over the last 10, 15, 20 years, the numbers do seem to be trending upward, both for teens and for adults. Slight increases in disordered sleep and insomnia. And I don't think COVID helped that at all. Why is that? Why is this trending upward? Why is it getting so much worse over time for us? I think some of you have touched on some of the factors already, but why is it that our sleep issues continue to rise? While you're thinking about that, we're going to talk about what sleep is more specifically. I'm going to talk about the sleep stages. Because sleep, like I said, it is dynamic and complex. It is not just one thing. It's not just shutting down, going into hibernation mode like your computer. There are stages to it. So we're going to describe each stage in turn so we can understand how we can fix our sleep. CG's puts it pretty bluntly, corporations getting more greedy. Alpha talks about our previous lessons on stress. Yes, indeed, we love referencing our previous lessons. Rao having to work multiple jobs to stay alive, increased stress. YouTube shorts. Rapid entertainment, yes. Nobi, you're probably not wrong about needing more choline. We'll talk about some of the nutrients involved. But let's talk about the first stage of sleep. Stage 1. Stage 1, well, it's light sleep, as you might imagine. In stage 1, your heart rate begins to slow, your breathing rate slows, your eye movements start to slow down, your muscles start to relax, they may twitch. You may start twitching like Michael Scott here. Have you ever had that happen where you have what is called the myoclonic jerk or the hypnic jerk? You know, where you're just about to fall asleep and then suddenly you bolt awake again? You ever had that happen? It's totally normal. It's totally fine. It happens to a lot of people. It is normal. It's kind of like that feeling where you tip too far back in your chair, and it's that moment where you realize, whoop, I'm about to fall, and you have that myoclonic jerk. Yeah, totally normal. There's some theories about why it happens. The sensation that the body is starting to descend, but we're not really sure exactly why it happens. The myoclonic jerk sounds dirty, Nomi. To me, it sounds like an exercise. Like, I'm going to do the myoclonic jerk and the clean and press. But yes, from the moment that your alpha brainwaves that we see here, once these indicate that you're no longer awake, when they're no longer the majority of your brain activity, you're technically asleep. During the stage, when you first fall asleep, it generally only lasts a few minutes. Stage 1 only lasts a couple of minutes. It might take you a while to get there. It certainly does for me. But once you get to that point, you are technically asleep and you only stay there for a few minutes. And it's a very quick descent into the deeper stages. Usually. But during this brief stage, it is critical to avoid disruption. Because if you are interrupted during this critical first stage, you may need to go through the whole process all over again. And this is where many people have issues. That first stage is supposed to be very quick. You're supposed to slip through that first stage and into the deeper stages pretty quickly and easily. But we frequently get interrupted during that first stage, and we have to keep restarting the process over and over again. So set yourself up for success. Try to prevent disruptions and make sure that your body and mind are ready for the changes that are about to come. Because it is a sequence of changes throughout the entire body system. Sleep is kind of like a roguelike. Yeah, you do have to get through the initial part of the dungeon crawl to get to the deeper parts. And if you die, you have to start all over again at the entrance to the dungeon. Sorry. That's just the way it is. Dragon, you say your phone doesn't come upstairs unless you have a specific use for it. That is a fantastic habit to develop, something that we're going to really focus on once we get to the how to get better sleep part of the lesson. We went through stage 1, light sleep, making sure that we don't have any interruptions or distractions. And then we get into stage 2. Now, stage 2 is where things get really, really important. The slowing down of all those bodily processes continues, and our temperature starts to drop. Our body temperature starts to drop. When we get into stage 2, then we're fully asleep. This stage is actually the stage we spend the most time in. we don't actually spend most of our time in, that deep REM sleep or stage 3. Stage 2 is actually where we spend most of our time during the sleep cycle. It only lasts the first time around about 20 to 30 minutes. Whoa! Thank you so much for the hearts, Gummy Burgers. Welcome. Evening. We'll talk a little bit about the sleep cycle after this, but the first time through, we're in this stage for about a half hour. This stage is really, really important for our brain, though. Very important for our cognition, because it's during this stage that we have a lot of our memory consolidation. We do a lot of the processing of all of the experiences we've had, all of the things we learned, all of the skills that we practiced. You can consider this stage to kind of be big iron on his hip. To the town of our yeah, we're definitely going to be getting back to the Mojave after the lesson, and we're going to lay waste to some more fiends. Thank you, Sad Panda. Hello. During this stage, you can consider it to be like our PC is booting up or rebooting for updates. We're defragmenting. We're taking all of the little fragmented pieces of memories and experiences that we had throughout the day and consolidating them into long-term memory. Now, we typically don't get really deep into the science of things here because we want to focus on the practical skills, but this little wave here is called the K complex. I'm going to shrink you all down a little bit so you can see it better. This is a brainwave pattern that happens while we are in stage 2 during sleep. Normally we're in sleep, so we have these very small little brain waves. But every so often during this stage, we have these big spikes. And for a long time, we didn't know what they were for, why they were happening. What's believed now is that these K complexes, which they call them because they apparently to the researchers it looked like a K. I don't see it, but whatever. During these complexes, these bursts are the brain formatting things, putting them away like a filing cabinet. So stage 2 is incredibly important for our cognition, our memory. So you really don't want to be interrupted during this stage. These short bursts of neurons, these sleep spindles and K complexes, that's your brain defragmenting, helping you to learn and remember things. It clears out the junk. All in all, you spend about 45% of your time at night during a sleep cycle in stage 2. But then we get into stage 3, the deepest stage of sleep. This is where you're totally asleep. And this is when it's hardest to wake up, because we're in that deep body sleep. We have really deep, slow brain waves here. Long, deep, slow delta waves. And in this stage, a lot of our physical repair happens. So we have our light sleep, puts us right into stage 2, where we have a lot of our brain and cognitive repair and improvement. And then in stage 3, we get a lot of our physical repair. This is the second biggest period of our sleep, 25% of our time. If you do get woken up during this stage, this is when you typically have that groggy, brain fog that we've probably all experienced, right? And it can last up to an hour. This stage getting interrupted during the stage can leave you in that groggy period for up to an hour afterwards. And we'll talk about why that's important to napping later on, but your tissue repair and growth, the health of your muscles and bones, your immune function, all very important in stage 3. Your body is really fully relaxed and getting that repair and recharge. Rowie said that's the stage when that makes you cranky when you wake up. Exactly. Because often we wake up during stage 3. We should wake up a little bit too early. But then we get into maybe everyone's favorite stage of sleep, REM sleep. The dream stage, right? REM sleep. In this stage, as you know, rapid eye movement, REM. Your heart starts to beat a little bit faster. It's irregular. And your brain waves, your blood pressure, your heart rate itself, they're much more similar to awake than they are to the other stages. Everybody sleeps sometimes. But the REM state brainwaves look a little bit more like the waking state brainwaves. They're not so much like the other sleep stage brainwaves. And the first time through is only about 10 minutes. You only are in REM sleep the first time throughout the night for 10 minutes. But this goes up during each cycle. And in that final stage, right before you wake up, is when you're most likely to wake up from a dream. And you get that kind of half remember, half forgetting the dream. But your brain is super active during this period. Your calorie expenditure for the brain, the sugar use, and the oxygen use spikes 20% during this stage. And there's some very surprising importance to REM sleep. Your thalamus is much more active. And as Empress asked, how do our dreams produced in REM sleep? Your thalamus is active. Normally in the other stages, it's inactive, but your thalamus is sending images and sensations from the brain to the other parts of the body, to the other parts of the brain. So you are actually feeling things as if you might have been awake. And yes, dreams. Why are they so weird? Why are dreams so strange? Well, it's because during this stage, because our brain is more active like it is during the waking period, and because our thalamus and other brain areas are active, we have more dopamine and less serotonin. We have more of the stuff, more of the brain chemicals that are involved in imagination, and less of the things that inhibit that kind of thinking. And REM sleep has extreme importance, surprising importance. It's not just, oh, you have some dreams during the night. Dreaming itself plays a biological, physiological role and a psychological role. Insufficient REM sleep, if you don't get enough REM sleep, leads to higher tension, greater anxiety, cognition problems. It can be harder to concentrate. And in fact, research shows that if you don't get enough REM sleep over a chronic enough period of time, you may in fact die. You can in fact die from not dreaming. There have been whole Star Trek episodes about this fact, where characters on the ship were not getting REM sleep because of some spatial anomaly, and so they all started acting in very strange, bizarre ways, like they were drunk, poor decision making, hallucinations. That isn't actually science fiction. That is science fact. You do have to have REM sleep. And if you don't remember your dreams, that's okay. Most people don't remember most of their dreams, but you do have to dream. You do need to get into REM sleep throughout the night. There are, like I said, psychological and physiological effects. Among the psychological effects, REM sleep is believed to be involved in emotional processing. It works to improve our emotional memory, our ability to connect things we've experienced in the past to things that we're experiencing currently, connecting our past situations that felt similar, helping us to remember the context for things that we've experienced, helps improve our emotional regulation. And it has physiological effects. REM sleep helps to warm the circuits, so to speak. It reinforces neural connections, which is involved in our cognition, our cognitive processes. REM sleep helps build on the defragmenting of stage 2, doing mental housekeeping, helping us to analyze the skills we've practiced, things we've learned, and rehearse. Even if we don't remember them, it's okay. The brain does. But like I said, this sleep happens in cycles. It's not just you fall asleep, you go through each stage, and then you wake up. You go through the stage, and then you go through the stage again. And then you go through the stage again, and hopefully again. And this is what the sleep cycle looks like. You start here, falling asleep, into your light sleep. Move you all over here. You go down into that deep sleep, and you spend more time in deep sleep in that first cycle. But then you go back up through the cycles. It's like a sine wave. You go down into deep sleep, and then back up into the lighter stages until you're in REM sleep. It's like throughout the night, REM sleep replaces being awake. You fall deeply asleep. You start coming out of deep sleep. You have your first 10-minute period of REM sleep. And then you go back down and back up and back down and back up. And what do you notice about the stages as the cycle continues? Oof, I got bonked. Thanks, Mortham. Ouch. Thanks for the apple. Good nutrition helps with good sleep. They do get shorter. Your deeper sleep stages get shorter and shorter throughout the night. And your REM sleep gets longer and longer. Such that by the end of the cycle, by that last cycle, you're not actually going back into stage 3 at all. You're getting almost all REM sleep. So you spend most of your time throughout the night in stage 2, and less time in stage 3, more and more time in that dreaming stage. I think this may have some impact on how we developed our intelligence, how our consciousness has developed over time. Hopefully, typically, you get 3 to 5 cycles in one full period of sleep. And each of these stages has different, very important functions. It's important that you get enough time in each stage. Enough time in stage 2 so that you're getting all those cognitive benefits. Enough time in stage 3 so your body is getting physically rejuvenated, your immune system is being repaired. And enough time in REM sleep so you're doing all of that mental housekeeping and all that emotional processing. So what do you think happens if you get interrupted in any of those stages? Maybe if you are getting enough total sleep, like you're technically no longer awake for 8 hours out of a day, but it's very fragmented. Is that good enough? Is getting a total volume of sleep sufficient? Empress, you say you'll get mad if you get interrupted. Exactly. Yeah. Very true. That irritability we talked about. Mood swings, poor emotional regulation. But we've talked about the stages, we've talked about the cycles, talked about why it's important, talked about what sleep is. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. Let's get to what's really important, and that's how do we get better sleep? What can we do? Well, there's no magic wand, there's no magic bullet, there's no magic pill, but there are steps that we can take. The first thing we're going to talk about is consistency. Consistency is a huge factor. You want to train your body and brain to understand that this is the time for sleep. This is when I go to sleep. You do want to try to maintain your circadian rhythm as much as possible. Work with your body rather than against it. There's been a long-standing myth that, well, humans aren't built for a 24-hour cycle. It's not really true. We are. Sleep is still, like I mentioned earlier, social, cultural, ideological. There's a lot of other factors involved in, when and how much and, biphasic or not. But we do have a circadian rhythm. And if you help to maintain it, you fall asleep faster, you stay asleep more consistently through the night, and you wake up more refreshed. A big part of that is because irregular sleep wreaks havoc on your hormone levels. And if your hormones are out of balance, if other parts of your body's homeostasis are out of whack, your total body health and wellness will be out of whack. But it is important to set a schedule. It can be whatever works for you. If you're a day person, if you're a night person, if you feel like 7 is the amount of sleep you need, or if you need 8.5, if you do a biphasic schedule, if you sleep for a short period during the day and the rest of the time during the night, as long as it is consistent. Because going back to this big, bold phrase at the top, train your body and brain that this is the time for sleep. And hello, Gaming Whiz. I have random insomnia, sometimes you can't, so sometimes you crash. Yeah, and we'll talk about sleep debt. I'm glad you brought that up. Try to train your brain. This is the time for sleep. So that's consistency, our first step. And the second step, we'll talk about after sleep debt. Since you brought it up, we'll do sleep debt. Sleep debt is when you don't get enough sleep, your body and brain need more, so you have debt. You need to pay the tax. You need to pay your body back, your brain back, for the sleep that it needs that you didn't give it. And it is cumulative. It adds up over time. If you don't pay it back, it does continue to add. Can you make up your sleep debt? Can you make it up? Do you think you can make up sleep that you've missed? Maybe. Maybe you can. Research is not exactly clear on how much you can. You can make up some of it. If you don't get enough sleep in one night, you can make up for it if you sleep a little bit more the next night. But if you don't sleep very well throughout the whole week, can you make it all up on a weekend by sleeping in 13 hours on Saturday? Perhaps not. You can make up some of it, but it seems to be that you can only make up small bits at a time. So if you're trying to rely on sleeping insufficiently throughout the week and then sleeping twice as much on the weekend, that might not be working. You might feel like you're rested enough, but the body is still incurring a sleep debt. What's best in making up for it is to pay it off in a small amount at a time and to start building back towards a consistency. Yes, Ivy, I think you've phrased it well there. It's not like paying off a debt, like, you make a big payment all at once to pay off your car. You slowly recover. Exactly. We've had step 1 with consistency, and then we get to step 2, ritual. Ritual is extraordinarily powerful, and I don't just mean, Ralsei will probably talk about occult rituals, but it's about training your body and brain that this is what I do right before I go to bed. So consistency, we've trained our body and brain. This is the time we sleep. We involve ritual right before bed to train our body and brain to say, this is what I do right before I go to bed. Ritual, in this case, involves, say, a 20 to 30 minute transition period right before you go to bed, where you engage in some relaxing activities. Maybe you read a little bit, you listen to some relaxing music, do a little stretching. take care of your personal care activities like brushing your teeth, combing your hair, brushing your hair. I like these especially because they give you an internal body focus. You're doing things where you're touching your body, you're thinking about your own body. It centers you. And if you do these things as your pre-bedtime ritual, where, this is what I do 20 minutes before bed every night, your brain does start to get primed to say, okay, yes, I'm getting ready for bed. You can also do some mindful activities like journaling, doing some of those breathing exercises like we talked about at the beginning of the lesson. What might you do? What might work for you? Think about what would be effective for you as a part of your nightly ritual. Maybe you go downstairs and hug your ferrets goodnight. I don't know, something like that. Especially things that are physical, like brushing your hair, brushing your teeth. Do your skincare routine. Dragon, you would read books, but you get too invested and keep you awake. Have to find some light reading. Have to find some light, relaxing, maybe comic books. Journaling, N2 says, probably the easiest first step, yeah. And I think those are really good activities because they give you an internal focus. They bring your mind to yourself internally. You're not thinking so much about the troubles in the world, what you've got to do tomorrow at work. Your ferret pooped in the corner. They didn't poop in the litter box. You're not thinking about that stuff. Yeah, journaling can be very powerful. But maybe you spend 10 minutes, you put your skin lotion on, you brush your teeth, you brush your hair, wash your hands. You do that 2-minute breathing exercise, stretch out for a couple minutes, and there's already your 15-20 minutes. You know what is not involved in any of that stuff, though? You know what we didn't mention at all in that nightly ritual? Dragon, you got some vintage comics you say for Christmas? Yeah, very good. I found a huge book of Garfield comics, one of those big compilations. Somebody was just throwing it out a couple years ago. I was like, who is throwing this out? Now I've got this big coffee table Garfield book. A screen. Tumblr, Bit Shepherd and Ivy say, yes. The thing we didn't talk about at all in our nightly ritual. Which can reduce cortisol, by the way. A nightly ritual. We didn't talk about the phone. So I'm going to say it. Put the phone away. Put the phone away. Put the phone away. Blue light during the day is normal. It is involved in the brain in alertness. It's actually good for mood and productivity if it's natural light. But blue light in the evening suppresses melatonin production. It suppresses your natural melatonin release, reduces your sleepiness. It hurts both your quality and quantity of sleep. Your melatonin production should be starting to peak, but you're actively suppressing it by bombarding your eyes with blue light. And Gummy, you're literally in bed with your laptop and phone. Oh, this is going to be a tough lesson for you then. This is going to be a tough one. Sorry. Tough love. But you know what? I do it too. We all do it. And to you say, if you listen to a book with a 30-minute timer, you fall asleep and never hear the book. You know what? Whatever works. Oh no, Ralsei is too. Hey, it's okay. We all do it. It's Saturday night. I'm not saying you got to be perfect or do it perfectly every night. We're talking about building habits. That stimulation inhibits your natural melatonin gland, your natural melatonin release, melatonin gland. And the research is pretty strong that the amount of phone use before bed does impact your total quality of sleep. The trend line is pretty consistently down. And that is common, also, yes. You don't actually need to take more melatonin for it to be more effective. There's a diminishing returns. And guess what? We have a whole slide on melatonin. For both adolescents and young adults, that's all of us, by the way. I mean, maybe you're older, I don't know. The people in the studies who use an unfiltered smartphone, that is without a blue light blocker, had the lowest melatonin levels of anyone in the study groups. People who used a blue light filter, at least if they were using a phone, they were using a blue light filter, they at least had better melatonin levels. And the people who spent their time reading in that study instead of looking at their phone had the highest melatonin levels. And of course, it isn't just the light. It isn't just the fact that you're putting blue light into your eyes. It is the fact that the phone is stimulating. And often we're looking at stressful content. We're doom scrolling, which we'll do our social media lesson again shortly. And it's also, we're interrupting that critical time. We talked about stage 1 as being so important. And yes, Calm Sister Todd is playing during this sleep lesson. I did re-add it to our background music. Then we get to step 3. So we've done consistency, ritual, and now we're going to talk about sleep place, our sleep environment. We've trained our body and brain that this is the time for sleep. We've trained our body and brain that this is what we do before we sleep. And now we're going to train our body and brain that this is the place for sleep. Our bed, our bedroom, or at least just the bed area around in that room, is just for sleep. It's not a dining room. It's not an arcade. It's not your office. It's the place where you sleep. You want to associate that place in your mind with rest and relaxation. Hey, and as X4 says there, listening to calming nature sounds, the rain, beach waves, that can help too. Decluttering that space can be very helpful as well. Associate it as a place of cleanliness, of calm, of quiet, of safety and security. That can be very powerful in making that place associated with sleep. And you want to keep that place cool, dark, and quiet. You may have specific preferences of temperature and light level, but by and large, a cool, dark, quiet place is best. Generally about 65 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Canadian, UK temperature units. You can tell me. But generally 65 degrees Fahrenheit is the best temperature. It is true that people like to be a little cooler in the environment and cover up instead of be warm in general. It's very true. We do spend a good third of our lives in bed. A quality mattress is a great investment. And keep those sheets and pillows clean whenever possible. Have layers available so that you can add temperature, reduce temperature as you need. Your body temperature drops throughout the night. And so it wants to be in that nice, cool, calm, darker, quieter space. Ivy, you asked, what about earplugs and noise machines? Yeah, I actually, in a different aspect, I wear a sleep mask. I wear an eye mask. Even though I keep my space dark and cool, one of my windows faces the sunrise, so I wear an eye mask to make sure that I don't wake up too early. No, earplugs, noise machines, perfectly fine. You don't want to become too reliant on it because then, if you're in a new space and you don't have it available, it can be tough, but still very helpful. So we've talked about consistency, ritual, and sleep space. Associating, this is the time when we sleep. This is what we do before we sleep. This is the place for sleep. What's next? Physical activity. Training your body to understand, hey, my body is ready to sleep. My body is ready. My body is ready for sleep. Regular physical activity. And I'm not talking, you have to be exercising all the time. I'm saying just regular movement throughout the day helps you fall asleep faster, helps you sleep deeper. That sleep is more restful. Your body temperature is better regulated so that you are feeling like you are calm and comfortable and cool. And it helps to regulate your cortisol, your stress hormone, and your melatonin. Everything about physical activity helps to improve your sleep. In fact, people who have regular physical activity, and again, this is just being regularly active throughout the day, not having to exercise all crazy, 55% less likely to have insomnia. And it really only takes about 30 minutes of moderate activity for most days of the week. You don't need to do an hour of exercise every day. If you can, great. But if you can get 30 minutes of moderate movement, you can reduce your likelihood of developing insomnia by over half. Yes, regular activity is not overdoing it. N2, exactly. Especially if you are exercising late at night, that can actually bring your body temperature up and make it more difficult to fall asleep. So morning and afternoon activity is ideal. You can do some relaxing evening movement like Tai Chi, yoga, stretching. Those can help bring, again, body focus. And those are great for blood flow to help you sleep. So we did consistency. This is the time for sleep. Ritual. This is what I do before I sleep. Sleep space. This is where I sleep. Physical activity. My body is ready to sleep. So what's next? Sunlight. Sun's out. Fun's out. Sun's down. Sleep town. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of a good one for this one. That was bad. But yes, getting some natural sunlight during the day helps to reinforce your natural cycle, your natural circadian rhythm. And getting some natural sunlight during the day, especially in the morning, can improve your sleep efficiency. Meaning the amount of time that you're spending asleep that is actually asleep. And again, we're just talking about the minimums. You can do more, and you can, if you can, you should, but if you can get 30 minutes outdoors, even if it's cold, we had that lesson about outdoor activity in winter. But otherwise, keep the blinds open during the day, get some natural sunlight in your space, and try to get that physical activity outside. Especially during winter, because lower sunlight, lower levels of natural sunlight in your life is associated with a higher risk of developing seasonal affective disorder, seasonal depression. Sun is friend. Yes, red sky in morning. Ferrets take warning. The sixth one, though, is eat, drink, and be sleepy. What to do about the nutrition? Food, water, and drugs. How do they affect our sleep? Well, the three nutrients that I'm going to talk about specifically are omega-3s, magnesium, and vitamin D. These are especially helpful in sleep health. Critical to get some amount of sunlight. And, we've also talked about making sure that we're not getting too much because of ultraviolet rays and skin health. Always in balance. But omega-3s, very powerful, very important for your sleep health. You also want to make sure you're including plenty of high fiber foods. Fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds. lack of vitamin D is associated with a risk of sleep apnea. So if you're not getting enough vitamin D, you may be at risk of getting sleep apnea or worsening your sleep apnea symptoms. Vitamin D can come from eggs, fish. Most milk and cereals are fortified with vitamin D. White mushrooms are good with vitamin D. Magnesium is important on its own, but it also works together with vitamin D for your sleep. And you can get magnesium from bananas, turkey, almonds, oatmeal, leafy greens. A lot of leafy greens like spinach have good magnesium levels. Sardines, eat those little bits of plastic. Microplastics. I didn't have a slide prepared about how microplastics might affect sleep. We might have to go back and add that in. So what's next after nutrition? After making sure that we're hydrating, we're getting plenty of water. Oh. Make sure that you're staying hydrated. Poor hydration is associated with lower sleep quality and quantity. Reduce or cut out tobacco. You know, what kind of drug is nicotine? You know, we covered vaping. What kind of drug is nicotine? How is it classed? What class of drugs is nicotine, class? It is a stimulant, exactly. You have to eat all the eggs, Nomi says. And thank you for the hydration redeems, Alpha. Yes, nicotine is a stimulant. You think it might help you relax? It's stimulant. Yes. Avoid nicotine, cut it out at all. Cut it out completely if you can. But certainly avoid it before bed because it is a stimulant. It will ramp up your brain's arousal centers and make it harder to sleep. Alcohol too, it may make you feel drowsy, but it does not lead to restful sleep. It's like how you feel warm when you drink alcohol, but it's not actually making you warm. So reduce nicotine, alcohol, cannabis use, get more omega-3s, more magnesium, more vitamin D, and drink plenty of water. So that's step 6. What is our step 7? Step 7. The last of our 7 steps is stress. Stress, of course, activates our fight or flight system, and it is self-reinforcing. You know, if we're stressed, we feel like, well, we can't sleep. There's stuff going on. There's stuff I need to take care of. There's something to worry about. And then you don't sleep well enough. And if you don't sleep well enough, if you are fatigued, what did we talk about with the effects on our mood? Well, it makes us more anxious. And if we're more anxious, then we don't sleep as much. And if we don't sleep as much, we're more anxious. Phone use activates your fight or flight response in many cases, especially because of all of the distressing content that we consume. And if we're not getting enough sleep and we're feeling more anxious, we're using our phone more often. And when we're anxious and our mood is dysregulated, we tend to have worse nutrition. And if we have worse nutrition, we feel more anxious and we don't sleep as well. And if we don't sleep as well, we're more sedentary. And if we're more sedentary, we don't sleep as well. It all feeds into itself and keeps us awake, which makes it harder to sleep. We don't want that stress. We don't need it. So try to work in some daily stress reduction activities like journaling, we talked about, being very effective. Getting sufficient exercise throughout the day. Maintaining social connection is very powerful in stress reduction. Try to work some of these stress-reducing activities into your life. And if you can think of some, tell me. What other stress-reducing activities might you be able to work into your daily routines? And before bed, do that breathing exercise. Meditate a little bit. And do progressive muscle relaxation. And if you haven't heard of that before, fantastic. I'm going to talk about it right now. Progressive muscle relaxation is basically activating and relaxing all of your body's muscles in sequence to help you get totally fully relaxed. Often we think that we're relaxed. We think that we're, laying in bed completely sinking into the covers, but we're not. It's why when you see someone in hypnotherapy and they say, go deeper and deeper, you can actually keep going deeper and deeper. To do progressive muscle relaxation, when you're laying there, you get comfy, your eyes are closed, you're taking a couple deep breaths, and then you curl your toes and hold it, clench them for a couple of seconds, and then you let it go. Slowly release, and really think about and feel the difference in your clenched, contracted, stressed state versus relaxed. And then you simply move all the way up through all of your muscle systems one at a time. You do the same thing with your calves. Contract them for a couple seconds and release. Contract your thigh muscles and release. Your hips and glutes, and then you move up to the torso. Contract your abdomen, your core, and release. Do the same with your chest and your arms till you get to your face. And you'll really feel a difference there when you sort of scrunch up your face and clench your face muscles and then release. Typically really feel it there. You'll feel how much stress we're holding in our face, in our tongue, in our jaw muscles. You might surprise yourself with, wow, I thought I was completely sunk into my mattress. But after I went through this activity, now I'm really relaxed. You're really letting gravity fully pull you into the earth. Yeah, unclench your jaw, trust me. Let that relaxation wash over you. And if you think that's interesting, you should be here for one of the other lessons in this unit. Because the next lesson after this is breathing. Oh, hello, Pat the Badger. Pat the Badger's back. We'll do a breathing practice exercise or lesson next week. And the lesson after that is guided meditation, where I will take you through a guided meditation that will involve progressive muscle relaxation. So, hey, mark your calendar for that. So those are our 7 steps that we talked about. Think about how you can work them into your routine. We have some important stuff to continue on. We're going to talk about remedies and melatonin. Melatonin. A lot of people use melatonin. It's not uncommon. And you know what? It's okay to use. If you're not getting enough of a particular brain chemical, store-bought is okay. Talked a little bit about melatonin already, but it regulates our sleep-wake cycle. And if you use it sparingly, it can be effective. This graph, though, shows the amount of people who have been using melatonin over the last 25 odd years. And that figure is growing pretty significantly. Probably has to do with the fact that sleeplessness is increasing. If you do want to try melatonin, start at about 1 to 3 milligrams. They come in maximum strength doses of like 10 milligrams, but you don't need to start there. And in fact, you probably shouldn't. Because we actually even touched on this earlier, there is a point of diminishing returns. And more melatonin is not necessarily better. Start at a low dose. See how it feels. Start about 2 hours before bed, because that's when your melatonin is starting to rise naturally. And see how it works. Increase only if you're not getting benefit. And I know a lot of people like to use the gummies because they're easy to take, but they're also easy to overdo. I'm not against gummies, but if I ever do take melatonin, I tend to take the capsules. They're usually cheaper, and they last a lot longer. And it's easier for me to, portion them out. They do work. is the point. Melatonin does work as a sleep supplement for many people, and it's okay to try. But just start low, start slow, and make sure you're noting to yourself how it feels. A lot of people don't really, whenever they take any supplement, and I make a point of emphasis about this in our supplements lesson, they start taking something and they're not really monitoring whether it's working or not. They just start taking it for a while, and then, a couple months go by and they're like, well, I feel better, or, I don't feel better. It doesn't work. And that can be hard to tell. And maybe during that same period of time, they were doing a bunch of other stuff that was improving or making their sleep worse. And if you're going to try melatonin, don't take anything else at the same time, because then you don't know which of the two things is working. The other remedy that a lot of people take or try, yeah, exactly, Anomalisa, mind your variables. The other thing a lot of people try is valerian root. It's not as popular, but a lot of people try it and it works for a lot of people. It does have a sedative effect. It's been used for a very long time as an herbal aid, but for some people it can lead to morning grogginess. There is also a small subset of people, and we don't really know if it's genetic or what the factors might be, but there's a percentage of people who, when they take it, it has the opposite effect. And I'm one of those people. I cannot take valerian root. I mean, I physically, I can, ingest it, but it will have the opposite effect, and I will be unable to sleep at all. I will feel tired, but I will not sleep. So if you are going to try valerian root, like if you've tried melatonin and it maybe wasn't for you, and you want to try valerian root, great, go ahead and try it. But I would definitely try it on a day when you don't need to be awake in the morning. Like try it on a weekend, a day when you don't have work in the morning. See if it works in that case. Because then if it doesn't and you have that opposite effect, it won't be as bad. But yeah, those are two possibilities that you could try. Valerian and melatonin. Need a lesson on what not to take. Yeah. The benefits of sleepy time tea. I had thought about putting that slide in here because I had it in the slide that I give for my in real life class for sleep health. But it didn't make it in because I have so many slides here already. But yes, chamomile and lavender tea, or chamomile and lavender generally, whether taken in tea or not, do have some benefit. It's not as well researched, and I think in part because there simply isn't as much research done on some herbal traditional remedies, but there aren't any significant negative effects for things like lavender and chamomile tea, and they do have relaxing effects. And tea in general, as Ivy just says, tea in general is relaxing. Having a nice warm cup of tea can be relaxing. And no alcohol. Yeah, do not put alcohol in there at all. Alcohol will not help you sleep. Or if it does put you to sleep, it will not be restful. Your body will not be getting recovery. And your brain will certainly be too busy fighting off the poison, because that's what alcohol is. But I want to talk about sleep apnea. This is the last thing we'll talk about as a major issue. Sleep apnea is very common, especially in our modern world, but you've probably heard of sleep apnea. But what is it? Need a better word for it than apnea? It is a very general word, right? Like just, without oxygen. It feels like it could mean a lot of things, but yes, sleep apnea is very common. There are two types of sleep apnea. I don't know if you've heard it before. You maybe have. Maybe you have a relative who has sleep apnea. But the first type of sleep apnea, we're not going to talk about much because it's central sleep apnea, and that's where the brain is the issue itself. The brain is not sending the proper signals to the breathing muscles to go through that breathing process smoothly. This primarily affects older adults and often involves people who have some cardiovascular issue or who are taking medications, especially pain medications. This is something that you would certainly be working on with a doctor. So we're not going to talk too much about sleep or central sleep apnea. It's not as common. We will be talking about obstructive sleep apnea. In obstructive sleep apnea, the issue is that the airway itself is obstructed, usually by tissues within the throat. The muscles within the throat are over-relaxed. They are not tensed properly. And so this can block off the airway periodically throughout the night, interrupting our breathing frequently. We may not even be aware that we're frequently waking up because of this obstruction. And this is a cause of snoring. It's not the only possible cause of snoring, but it's one of the potential causes of snoring. So this frequently wakes people up throughout the night. So they're not getting enough air, they're not getting enough oxygen, hence the term apnea. Age is a factor. It is more likely as we get older and the tissues within the throat change and age. Our anatomy can be a factor. There might be overly thick tissues in the area. Family history is a risk factor. If you need more reasons to stop smoking, smoking is a factor, as well as drinking alcohol. Certain medications can also make it more likely to develop sleep apnea. The symptoms that people have are, the first one people will notice is snoring. They may be more fatigued in the morning. Morning headaches are common. They may have concentration or mood dysregulation issues, but it may be hard to distinguish that from simply not getting enough sleep. Often, snoring is the thing that people realize as their main symptom, and it's often other people in their life, their partner or their children, who realize you're snoring a lot. You should go get checked out for sleep apnea. Some of the consequences, though, of undiagnosed sleep apnea, if you don't get it addressed, if you aren't getting treatment, it can lead to hypertension, high blood pressure, other cardiovascular issues like blood clots, stroke. It can lead to depression and anxiety, and it can actually also lead to a greater risk of diabetes, which some people aren't sure why. They ask, why would snoring a lot or interrupted sleep lead to diabetes? It's intermittent hypoxia that frequent lack of oxygen and sleep fragmentation lead to abnormal glucose metabolism, which thus then leads to more likely diabetes. It is more common as you get older, as you get into mid-age. But this point here that it's something people may not be aware is happening is very important. It's very crucial to note because 90% of people who have sleep apnea may not know they have it. And thus it continues to go untreated in that person. And that all of these long-term consequences can arise. So if you suspect you may have sleep apnea, definitely something to get checked out if possible. Because if you don't, great. But if you do, there's a lot you can do to help yourself. There are a lot of available treatments. The main one people know about is the CPAP machine, or a CPAP mask, which is continuous positive airway pressure, where a mask or a hose that goes over the mouth or just the nose in some cases helps to put air through the airway, helps to keep that airway open, those obstructions unblocked. But they can also help to address it with what's called mandibular advancement devices, which are kind of like mouth guards or retainer type devices, because in some cases, just putting the jaw in a better position can help open the airway. Sometimes it's the palate of the throat that is obstructed. There's one other thing I want to talk about, though, with sleep apnea, because I'm not an expert and I don't want to give you medical treatments, but I will mention orofacial myofunctional therapy, which are exercises of the mouth tongue, and the throat that can help to strengthen the tissues in that area to help reduce sleep apnea symptoms. I'm just going to post a segment from this study. Orofacial myofunctional therapy consists of isotonic and isometric exercises targeted to oral and oropharyngeal structures with the aim of increasing muscle tone, endurance, and coordinated movements of the pharyngeal and parapharyngeal muscles. Recent studies have demonstrated the efficacy of OMT in reducing snoring, apnea-hypopnea index, and daytime sleepiness, and improving oxygen saturations and sleep quality. Myofunctional therapy helps to reposition the tongue, improve nasal breathing, and increase muscle tone in pediatric and adult OSA patients. What that means is that there is some evidence that doing this kind of exercise therapy can reduce the symptoms. They specifically mention pediatric patients here because this type of therapy is used for children who have had their tonsils and adenoids removed, because it's often when children have those removed, they develop mouth breathing. Or children who have had some kind of surgery in and around the face may develop mouth breathing or start snoring. And so they've done this type of therapy with them, and it can help reduce their snoring and help them sleep better, help them breathe better. And the research seems to indicate that it can help adults with this too. So I'm not going to take us through like a exercise program with this. I will note that there are YouTube guides for this that you can look up, and I will post the links to those. I'll post the links to those in the Discord, and if anyone wants those, these will also be in the description of the video and in the VOD later on. So you can look these up and follow these types of routines to help strengthen the tissues within those throat structures and potentially reduce your symptoms. But now we get to one of my favorite topics. Naps. How many of you take naps? How many of you like to take a nap during the day? Or throughout the night, if you're a daytime sleeper? You still snore to this day, enemy? Well, maybe some orofacial myofunctional therapy could help you out. And two, you take naps. I do like a good nap now and then. Ivy, if you do nap, you do one after you get home from work. If you nap, you're down, it's full sleep, enemy. Totally relatable. Don't want to sleep too much during the day, Empress, correct? Yeah. A well-timed daytime nap, there is good research showing that it can improve mood and memory, boost your physical performance and immune system, reduce stress, improve your mood regulation. But the timing is very important. You want to time it so that the naps are about a half hour. Or if you need a longer nap, that they're about 90 minutes. Yes, the timing exactly, Anomalisa. Speaking of timing. Why do you think that is? Why do you think 30 minutes is optimal for a nap, or 90 minutes is optimal if you need a longer one? This is the in-class quiz portion of the lesson. There we go. There's all my amazing students coming on in with the correct answers. Yep, that 90 minutes is about the length of one full sleep cycle. That is where you would be getting through one cycle. You're getting that great brain refreshment of stage 2, the body refreshment of stage 3, and you're waking up during the lighter REM sleep, so you're not groggy. Or 30 minutes, because you're getting that refreshing of that first stage 2 cycle without getting woke up during that deeper stage 3. Exactly. And N2, I was going to include a little blurb here about the coffee nap, the power nap. Since we'll do caffeine again, but not for a little while, as one of our lessons, I will mention it here. Caffeine does take about 30 minutes to even up to an hour to fully absorb and take effect in the body. So some people do engage in the habit of they'll drink some coffee and then take their nap, because then by the time they wake up, they've set their timer for a half hour. Now the coffee's starting to kick in and they're getting the sort of double boost. They're double dipping. They're getting the benefit of a refreshing nap and they're getting the caffeine kick. It doesn't seem to have any sort of drawbacks, so to speak, unless, of course, your timing is off. So if it's something that works for people, hey, give it a try. But like I said, with the melatonin and the valerian, if you want to try something like that, try it on a day where you don't have anything important to do, right? Invest in a sleep mask, I say, if you want to nap during the day. Maybe some earplugs. Make sure your space is cool, dark, and quiet, like any other sleep space. Make sure you're comfortable. Some people end up sleeping in odd positions when they nap because they're not sleeping in their normal space. And then they get neck cramps. Their back hurts. You want to avoid that, so make sure that you have your sleep space, especially if it's not your normal bed that you take your nap in. That's naps. And then we get to one little fun thing that I like to talk about. We talked about the importance of dreaming. We talked about the importance of REM sleep as like a physiological, psychological thing. But what about naps more as the psychological part? What about naps? What about dreams as the psychological part? Can we interpret our dreams? Do our dreams have meaning? Do they have some inherent meaning beyond just random stuff going through our head? What do you think? Do you believe that you might be able to interpret dreams? And I don't necessarily mean in a grander, maybe spiritual level. If that's the case, no problem. But do you think that maybe there's something to our dreams are reflections of our psychological issues, our troubles, our trials and tribulations? Do you think that we can interpret our dreams? Reagan, you say you think there are thoughts being processed, so possibly, yeah. You think so, Anomalisa? It can for some people, Empress says. Ivy, you say for you, 90% of the time you dream it's something you've been thinking about lately. The rest is things you've thought about, haven't thought about, but are important to you. Perhaps that's, those are the dreams you remember, right? The things that are important. Anomalisa, you think they're very important both personally, psychologically, and spiritually? I think they are important in that psychological sense of the things we're going through. But I think that even just trying to interpret them can be beneficial in its own right. Because even if they don't have an inherent meaning, even if they totally mean nothing, even if they are just random thoughts passing through our heads, if they cause us to reflect on the things that are going on in our lives, if they're making us think about, hey, what am I going through lately that I might have been concerned about that, or thinking about that person. If it is making us pause for a moment or two to think about the things we're going through, I think that's valuable in itself. If it helps to interrupt us from going through life on automatic and trying to avoid thinking about the things we're going through and what might be important to us, what might be weighing on us, people that are important to us, I think that has value in itself. It's like if it doesn't have meaning, it doesn't matter. We're already making it have meaning on our own by reflecting on our lives. Again, if you don't remember your dreams, don't worry about it. Most people don't. But if you do want to remember your dreams, there are a couple of tips that have worked for me in the past. And that is consciously remembering to remember. That is reminding yourself throughout the day, especially as you get closer to sleep, I'm going to remember my dreams. I'm going to remember to remember the dream. You also want to try to reflect on the dreams immediately, of course, before they start slipping away. You know, your active memory consolidation part is not as active during that REM sleep. So once you do get into wakefulness and it starts ramping up, you want to try pulling those details into memory. Dream journals may seem cliche, but they do work. If you reduce your alcohol consumption, your THC consumption, that definitely has a bearing on remembering dreams, and avoiding heavy meals. One tactic that a lot of people use very successfully is focusing on a personal symbol. They'll pick out some kind of symbol, some kind of icon or figure, some character, to tell themselves, if I see this, I'll know that I'm dreaming. If I see this symbol, I know that I'm dreaming. Some people use the moon. When I used to do this, I used a Triforce. Your Inception totem, basically. Yeah, Ivy. You know why it works? Because it doesn't matter if you see it in real life or not. Because if you see it in real life and you think, oh, I'm dreaming, well, you're not. It doesn't matter. But your brain is primed to make yourself question, to ask the question, am I dreaming? I see this symbol. Oh, I should question if I'm dreaming. And if it turns out you are, that is more likely to induce lucid dreaming. So that is a tactic that a lot of people who do lucid dreaming successfully have incorporated. Focus on a personal symbol. Yes, a personal symbol can be helpful. Remember to remember, reflect on those dreams immediately, start journaling your dreams. Those can help. But you know what really helps you dream more and remember more? Getting more sleep. So this is the rundown of what we talked about. Consistency. Create yourself a schedule. Ritual. Create yourself a routine. Sleep space. Create yourself a good sleep environment. Physical activity. Start moving more. Sunlight. Get some sun rays. Nutrition. Eat better for sleep. And stress, reduce your strain. These are our 7 steps. And once I have some time to put this VOD together, I will also make a shortened, like 5-minute version that just gives the quick rundown of our 7 steps. But that's the lesson itself. So here's the fun part, your homework. Your homework, should you choose to accept it, is to, by the next time we see each other next week for next week's lesson on breathing practice, is to incorporate at least 2 of the steps we talked about. Pick 2 of these things at least, and make a plan to put those into your life. Use them this week. And then note their effect. Note whether they worked for you. Note how they helped. That's your homework. If you can do all 7, all the better. But at least do 2 of those. And that's all I have for you for your lesson portion of the evening. Do you have any other questions, comments, feedback, suggestions? Like feedback, for example, I forgot to do my jokes. I forgot to do the jokes that I wanted to use. You know, I used to always do dad jokes or teacher jokes. Like I was going to ask, what do you call a sleepy dinosaur? A Tyrannosaurus Rex. Ivy asks, what's the best way to wake up? Gently. Gently is definitely the best for most people. Like a progressive, slow wake up. That helps to avoid that daytime or that morning grogginess, the feeling of getting jumped awake, jerked awake. But that really then has to do with the timing. Like if you can time that so that you're in that REM sleep, that dream period, and you're waking up during that time, great. But that takes some trial and error. How about why should you always be quiet in church? Because people might be sleeping. I know these are good because nobody's even hitting me with spitballs or anything. One more. So, person goes to the. There they are. They were all backed up. Gross. Person goes to the doctor and says, I'm having trouble sleeping. What do you suggest? Doctor says, you seem stressed out. You should really not take your problems to bed with you. You really got to stop taking your problems to bed with you. Don't take your problems to bed with you. Person goes, well, yeah, but my husband doesn't want to sleep alone. I thought that was pretty good. Get it? Because they're taking their problem to bed with you. Sleeping in the ferret den with that joke, I deserve it. I do deserve that one, yes. But with that, congratulations, class. This was one of our longer lessons because there's so much great stuff to talk about. And we made sure to take a good couple of breaks. But you have completed our sleep health lesson. I present to you this certificate of completion, this January 18th, 2025. I can put your name on this and send it to you over Discord if you want. You can jump on into the Discord if you like. You can join our Discord at the link here. You can also hit me up on the socials if you want to message me there. Twitter, Blue Sky, probably mostly Blue Sky in the near future. But this and all of our other lessons will also be available at our Lessons VODs channel, the link to which is in the chat now. A YouTube playlist with all of our previous lessons. I will be making another list as well for all of our current curriculum, all of our current units. But that is our lesson on sleep health. Those of you who are watching live, we're going to jump into our game for the evening. Those of you who are watching this on a VOD, if you're watching this on a replay, thank you so much for being here with us and enjoying our content. And if you are, please, by all means, follow along, put the notifications on so you can join us live, especially on Twitch, because that way you can hit me with the spitballs and stuff with your gold stars. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. I hope you learned something useful and that you can apply it to improve your quality of life. If you liked what you saw, make sure to follow the channel and follow us on Twitch so you can join our lessons and games live. On the screen, you'll see links to our channel and our playlist of other lessons. Thank you again for watching and for supporting independent streaming and educational content. I hope to see you next time. Class dismissed.